This video shows you a quick example of a lay the draw trade in a Norwich versus Leicester game that gave me a 70% return of investment on my stake. For those of you unfamiliar with the lay the draw strategy, it's one of the most common football trading strategies out there. It typically involves placing a lay bet when the game is drawing either at half time or during the second half, but can be placed at any point really. If there is a goal after you've placed the lay the draw trade, you'll go on to make a profit once you cash out. In case you don't know me, I'm not a trading expert. This is only my second year trading and only my first year of really focusing on football trading. Therefore, I'm not going to claim to be an expert like some people do on the internet, because I'm not an expert. I'm just like you, someone who is learning and trying to become a profitable trader, and I'm hoping that you can follow me along my journey. I'm only using relatively small stakes in Betfair trading. In this example I use a £10 stake, but I believe my stakes to be proportional to my bank balance, and I've managed to grow my bank balance from around £500 to around £750 in a 3-month period. I've been able to keep that up through consistent staking and good risk management. Now I'm hopeful that I'll be able to keep that up for the rest of the season, and if so, I'll massively increase my stakes for the next season and aim to make a lot more profit. Right, without any further preamble, let's get onto the trade. So the game is a Leicester versus Norwich game from the 28th of August in the Premier League. And in this video, I'm going to break down the thought process I had at each point in this trade, before placing the trade and during the trade. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch this game. I was trading multiple matches at the same time. So all of my data from this game was looking from the statistics and pre-match research. So remember, for the lay the draw strategy, we're looking for a game that is currently drawing, but we think there's a good chance there's going to be a goal during the rest of the game. The game between Leicester and Norwich was 1-1 at half time. This was a game between one of the stronger sides in the league, Leicester, who finished 5th last season, and Norwich, who are one of the favourites to get relegated this season. Leicester were the away team, which typically away teams don't perform as well as home teams, but when I looked at the data, I saw that Leicester had one of the best away records in the Premier League last season. And yes, I know it was last season, and I know it has the massive caveat about being played during COVID when there were no fans in the stadium. However, I still believe it was useful information. So far, I believe that if there was going to be a goal scored in this game, it would likely come from Leicester. However, I wanted to look further into the data to see if there's anything else to support the hypothesis that this game was suitable for the lay the draw strategy. Form is almost impossible to look at this early stage in the season. We were only 2 games into the season. Norwich had played only 1 game at home and Leicester had only played 1 game away before this game. However, from these games we did see that Norwich did concede in the second half of their home game, and Leicester both scored and conceded in the second half of their away game. But like I said, it is a little bit naive to be looking at the form this early in the season, so I'm taking this data with a pinch of salt. Next up, I began to start thinking about the incentives of the two teams. Leicester had come off a pretty bad 4-1 defeat away to the Hammers. That was also a televised game, so I'm pretty sure they'll be looking at this game to try to rectify that result, and also add into the international break, which was after this game, high of morale, ready for the rest of the season. There could be an argument that Norwich, playing one of the better sides in the league, could be willing to settle for a 1-1 draw after getting to half time at 1-1. However, having seen Norwich play under manager Daniel Farke, I know that they aren't Burnley. They aren't one to sit back and soak up big pressure. I think they will want to try and get on the front foot, and they also know that they've got a very flaky defence, conceding an average of 2 goals a game when they were last in the Premier League. So I thought there was a good chance that Norwich could concede in this second half, and a slim chance they could go up the other end and nick a good result. Especially early in the season, with Norwich at home, with the crowd up, they have a good chance of nicking a good result early in the season, like the last time they was in the Premier League, when they beat Manchester City 3-2 at home. But after all of that background data and statistics, I decided to look at something that was much more important than any of that, and that's the in-play stats for the game itself. Because all my initial assumptions about the data could be correct, but if I look at the stats of the game and see that it's a drab affair and neither team are up for it, then a big red flag would appear, and this would be a game to completely avoid for the lay the draw strategy, where we are rooting for goals to be scored. My first point of call is to look at the XG, that's expected goal stats. At half time, it was 0.9 to 0.9 on XG, fittingly so because the half-time score was 1-1. However, a flag was raised here because I know that a penalty makes up 0.75 XG, and Norwich's goal came from a penalty. So it looks like Norwich weren't creating many chances except for the penalty they had in the game. My next point of call was to look at the attack momentum to see how the game had been panning out in the first half. And to be honest, it looked like a pretty cagey affair, with neither team having sustained periods of attacking momentum in the game. Again, I'd like to point out that I wasn't watching this game live because I was doing other trading opportunities in different matches, so it can be difficult to come to a conclusion accurately on how the game was going ahead. But I still think it is possible to do that. After looking at all of these in-play stats, I was now quite wary of placing a later draw trade on this game, but I realised that the game was only half time. I was willing to let the game run for the first 10 or so minutes into the second half to see what was happening, how the teams changed at half time, if they were doing anything different tactically, and if either team was starting to get on top of the game and looking to get that winner, or if both teams were settling for the point. I also like to point out that at half time, the odds for a draw were still well above the odds of 2, and when we're laying, remember, we want to lay at the lowest odds possible. That means we have the lowest liability and lose the least amount of money if the bet goes against us. In the second half, I started to see that Leicester were starting to get on top of the game. When we look at the attack momentum graph, we saw that Leicester were getting more and more on top of Norwich and applying more pressure. I briefly checked Leicester's goal scoring rate away from home from last season and saw that they scored the majority of their goals in the second half. And yes, caveat again, I know that was last season and I know it was COVID, but it's still mostly the same team playing under the same tactics. My opinion that a goal was coming in this game was getting stronger and stronger, and it was getting strong enough to validate opening a position in the later draw strategy. I had a brief look at the XG chart and saw that both teams were still creating chances, not only Leicester. So this was obviously great news because remember, in the later draw strategy, we're not only just looking for one team to score, but either team scoring would lead us to get a profit. So at around the 60-minute mark, I decided that I was going to place the lay bet on the draw. So like I said, I'm only using £10 stakes. I checked the odds and they were currently around 2.1. I decided to wait a little bit longer until the odds came in to around 2.0 before placing the lay bet on the draw. From experience, I was expecting, if this trade was to go into my favour, I'd make between about 50% and 80% of my stake. Obviously that was highly dependent on which team scored and how far through the game they scored. I was planning on letting my lay bet run for the entire duration of the game, so that means my maximum risk was the entire stake, which was minus £10 in this example, because I'd laid at odds of 2. And as I said, if this trade was to win, I was expecting to make between 50% and 80% of my stake, so that's between around £5 and £8 on a £10 stake. If I put all of this information into a strike rate calculator that I have created, then I can see, to be profitable long term placing this trade, I need to be successful between 56 and 67% of the time, and that would make this a profitable trade. Given all the data I've mentioned and the in-play stats that I've looked at and come to an opinion of, I was satisfied with the risk versus reward of this trade. I believe that a goal was more likely in this game than the percentages that I've just laid out, so consequently believe this would be profitable long term. So once the lay bet was in, at around the 60-minute mark at odds of 2, all I needed to do now was wait and see if the goal came in. And lo and behold, 15 or so minutes later, Leicester got the goal, making the game 2-1. The odds of a draw went all the way up to around 7, and I cashed out of the trade immediately for a £7 profit, which was a 70% return on my initial stake. So obviously I was happy to win the trade, but was also very happy that the return was within the 50% and 80% that I had predicted beforehand. So yeah, this was a successful trade, and yes, it was only £7. Hopefully if I get more and more successful trading, I can increase my stake significantly, ready for the next season. But like I said, this is only the start of my trading journey, and I believe that many people like you are also in this position that I'm in. Hopefully you can come along with me as we try to become profitable together. Here is another video that I think you'd like on using football stats to help you trading. Thank you for watching this video, I'll see you in the next one.